Welcome to episode 4 of the Changemakers with Forbes India and Hilton. Today we are at the newly launched Hilton Gurugram Bani City Centre in the heart of Gurugram's bustling business and innovation district. In this episode, we explore groundbreaking advancements in sustainable technology and storytelling driving India's ascent as a global leader.
We are the stories we tell.
Mobility will change in India over the next year.
Staying authentic and true to your core while embracing innovation will aid India's leaders as they push boundaries and create a transformative future.
Our time here is limited. We will be remembered by the stories we tell. That shapes culture. That shapes conversation.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Changemakers with Forbes India and Hilton. As we conclude this exciting series, we are diving into our most transformative conversations yet, India's global influence. Looking forward. Well, India is in fact redefining its position on the world stage from groundbreaking advancements in sustainable technology to storytelling that resonates across cultures. Today's podcast highlights two change makers who exemplify the innovation and boldness driving India's ascent as a global leader. I'm thrilled to be here today with Puneet Goel, co-founder of BlueSmart, a pioneer in sustainable transformation, revolutionizing green mobility in India while paving the way for global leadership in EV technology. And then we have Guneet Monga. She's an acclaimed film producer whose work bridges Indian narratives with global audiences, elevating Indian cinema as a cultural force at the world stage. Well, welcome to the Changemakers. As we discussed about India's growing influence at the global stage, what does this really mean to you? How do you look at it? How do you see your role in it? Let's first begin with Puneet.
I think India's story has been fantastic, and if I were to talk about myself and our sector, I think India has really leapfrogged to become one of the largest clean energy economies of the world. Over the last 10 years, India went on to build gigawatts of solar power plant. I think at the time I was in the solar space in 2012, India was, much below, ranked 50th or something in terms of building solar power plants or wind power plants. The annual capacity in India at that time was about less than 100 megawatts a year in building solar projects. Today, India has a run rate of about nearly 10 gigawatts of solar projects that India is now building. So I think the role of India in the new economy could be around energy and new energy, which has been game-changing, especially in the last 10 years. India went on to build close to about 160 gigawatts of new solar and wind plants. I think also the time has come for India now to also embrace new technologies for mobility, given our population and the growth mindset that we have and the economy, the way the GDP is growing. I think India will continue to play a very big role over the next 20 years in the new mobility paradigm. And I think that's where companies like BlueSmart can play a very big role in helping India lead the electrification drive that eventually will play out over the next 20 years.
And Puneet, if I may ask you, what inspired you to be in green mobility?
That's a very interesting question. So I've been a serial clean energy entrepreneur.
Yes.
I spent about 10, 12 years building solar power plants. And I was in the US in 2016-17 to see a new technology called Hyperloop One. That was at that time going to be a game-changing technology for moving people at really rapid, fast speeds. And I chanced upon a few people in the US, namely Brent Kalinikos. He was the CFO of a company called Hyperloop. And prior to that, he was CFO of a company called Uber between 13, 14, 15 circa. And we were speaking on various topics of clean energy. And what he told me, which became the founding bedrock of BlueSmart, that the future will be electric. And it'll be very difficult to create an Airbnb of electric mobility, because given that to run a large electric mobility business, you will have to think through the entire model of energy, infrastructure, mobility, and technology. You'll have to build the EV infrastructure and get electric cars, and nobody was thinking about that. And so we got talking. I spent about a year between LA and Nevada and SF, meeting everybody in the EV space. And I was pitching my idea to a few people in India that there could be an opportunity to start Blue Smart. And that's when I met my co-founder, Mool, who was also thinking about building charging stations. And his idea was to build a large EV charging network. And somehow everybody I was meeting was thinking on a siloed model of just doing one thing. And we said, okay, if we can build a vertically integrated, full stack EV ride-hailing service and EV charging network, which is joined together by a born electric technology stack, that could be a game changer. And that's how Blue Smart started with that idea.
That was like Rab ne bana di jodi kind of a story. But Guneet, tell us more on the influence, the growing influence of Indian storytelling, in the Western world. How does West look at our stories?
What is very interesting about India is that we are actually many languages. I think there is that awareness that is now kind of seeping in, that we have a very large Tamil industry, Telugu industry, Kannada, Malayalam, Punjabi, Bengali, and Hindi. In the world of cinema, many countries put together. Because each of these industries are pretty robust, and each of these industries have their own set of, heroes and heroines and directors and craft, and also the language of storytelling, the style of storytelling. The digital India has kind of merged those borders, where we are consuming a lot of content, which is pan-India. As a result, films have definitely started to be bigger. So India is a very exciting market because there is so much. It's large and it's culturally very, very diverse. And to explain that to the West, I almost feel like just sending one film for the international Oscar entry is kind of a disservice to our country, because we have beautiful films in every language. And that is something that the West, I'm sure, is understanding the opportunity of that kind of scale, where Hindi is as big, and so is Tamil, and so is Telugu. So RRR did have a large impact. And in the same year, there was Elephant Whisperers last year at the Oscars, which was an independent documentary on an orphan elephant. And then there's this larger-than-life dance song, and that is India. I like to define, at least in the film world, India is everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, and speaking of Elephant Whisperers, when you interacted with the people at Oscars, what was their response and initial reaction to Elephant Whisperers when they saw it? And how did they respond to the narrative, to your storytelling, to the Indian storytelling?
It was beautiful, it really, really moved people. I really think, we are the stories we tell. And I feel like, I feel a bit spiritual about this. I feel like our time here is limited. And we will be remembered by the stories we tell. By the time we go, our stories will stay forever, and how they will age. Elephant Whisperers had a very, very beautiful impact. People loved the love story of Baman and Belly coming together. They loved Raghu, Amu. I have been in rooms where children have had like jaw-dropping response, and I've been in rooms where adults have just teared up, and I think that is the magic of and our passion. I feel like it lights the fire in my belly to imagine the sound and the music and the picture coming together, and it's mesmerizing. It's a one-way storytelling medium where I tell the story and people come in and see it. I feel very responsible of taking people's time to tell that, to be able to tell. Elephant Whisperers was 40 minutes and is a documentary. It's available on Netflix for everybody to watch. It also did become, India's first Oscar for any Indian production. The response of it was just beautiful. It took us 5 years on the journey. I was on it for 3.5 years. My director was on it for 5 years, for 40 minutes. But all those decisions you make on transcending language barriers, because it's the emotion that lasts, that crosses boundaries and makes all of us one.
Yeah. And what role do some of these stories play in building this identity of brand India globally? Because let's say 10 years ago, whenever I would travel anywhere abroad and I would say I'm Indian. Oh, dal chawal, you speak Hindi. I'm like, I speak Hindi, but my mother tongue is Marathi. So what role do some of these stories play in, building that image of diversity, of how diverse our country is for the global audiences?
This medium is the biggest soft power. It's the biggest, it's the biggest soft skill, soft power, and it's a conversation starter. It's hugely powerful in shaping and telling, so if you look at a decade, if you look at last decade, if you look at 90s, 80s, 2000, you actually think about these decade with stories that you tell. So it was like, oh, the era of Mirch Masala and, there was Nasiruddin Shah, the era of romance, the 90s, the, Shah Rukh Khan and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai and Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, the era, you define decades with these stories.
Yeah.
You can close your eyes and you can think about 90s and you would just think about films. You will think about 70s and 80s, you'll be like Amitabh Bachchan, so the angry Indian man coming out of emergency, so you literally every decade is defined by the stories that we tell. This is a current conversation where people are discovering that India is not just Hindi, and it's a huge nation with so many languages. And that actually happened with the digital players like Netflix, Amazon, Hotstar, Disney coming into India and understanding the scale that it is at right now and what it can go.
Yeah. So OTT platforms also,
Definitely
helped for that push. Over to you, Puneet. What are some of the innovative strategies? We all know that, we are struggling when it comes to electric mobility infrastructure in the country. There are, of course, so many players who are launching their EVs, but of course, charging infrastructure is something that gets questioned. So what are some of the challenges and how are you overcoming it with some of the innovations and, innovative approach?
We today operate about 22 lakh square feet of EV infrastructure in India. Charging infra will be very critical for the growth of electric mobility. And the big challenges we see in the charging space is lack of space and lack of load. Because every city is limited or confined with limited areas. And you don't have a lot of open areas which are there. Then load is not available. So you need to find land and load at the same time, connect the dots. And that's a huge infrastructural challenge that every city will face in the world. Initially, we thought that we will focus on our ride-hailing business and we'll bring electric cars and we'll partner with companies who can build the EV infrastructure for us. That was a good short-term approach, and we then figured out that that's not the right model. We will have to invest in EV infrastructure ourselves and also maybe open the EV infrastructure for third party. So initially, the charging infrastructure investment that we did ourselves. We built out this massive EV infrastructure. We invested close to about $35–40 million in building the large EV infrastructure. Now we are going to open the EV infrastructure for third parties. So other people who have electric cars can come to our massive charging hubs. So basically replacing the IOCL, BPCL, HPCL style of those small petrol pumps where 4 and 5 cars can be fueled at one go, to massive charging networks where you can have 100 cars or 200 cars zipping in, zipping out, and getting charged in parallel. I think collaboration is a very important theme here. And that's where the mighty fleet of Blue Smart, which is large in size, can then bring in the utilization for the charging infrastructure.
What were some of the challenges also, Puneet, if I may ask you, that you faced while getting all of these stakeholders on board while scaling your business when it comes to electric mobility?
I think the biggest challenge for us was charging infrastructure, given that each car is basically a battery on the move. Each car has about 22 kilowatt-hour battery or 40 kilowatt-hour battery. So basically these are batteries on the move. So charging was and continues to be the biggest roadblock for us as we continue to scale. Second being capital, because we are doing this capital expenditure for buying cars, leasing electric vehicles, building the EV infrastructure. It's a massive upfront investment that we're doing. But I think the opportunity is so big that the challenges kind of look smaller when compared to the opportunities.
Fantastic. Speaking about innovative approaches, and Guneet, you mentioned how OTT platforms play a role in taking the Indian stories and Indian cinema to international audiences. But we've seen what has happened with Korea and, all the stories coming out Korea when it comes to K-drama or, movies from Korea. So when will India have its Korea moment?
Yes, it is definitely a matter of time. There's been a money heist, there's been a Squid Game. It's a matter of time that India and the amazing filmmakers here will do something that breaks out around the world. Then there always, there is Hira Mandi, there's always something that's happening for sure. But also at the core, it is distribution. What we were able to do with one of our films, which is Lunchbox, or very recently, action film called Kill, was look at distribution and innovate that. Both of them played at a festival. Lunchbox went to Cannes and Kill went to Toronto. And from there, we looked at distributing the whole world with local distributors in every country, which are doing foreign language films. What I'm trying to say here is that we moved beyond the diaspora, which is not the traditional approach, because otherwise it's very safe. It's 100% equity investment in a movie, and it's usually distributed to players who are distributing to the diaspora, to the main territories, to the large. And India has a huge diaspora, and a huge diaspora also really loves our movies. They show up for the movies. Having said that, they show up for bigger movies and things that they discover. There's also habit changing that's happening post the pandemic. But with Kill and with Lunchbox, we were able to take that opportunity and break open and touch the glass ceiling in terms of distribution. For example, Lunchbox was distributed by Sony Picture Classic in US, and Kill was distributed by Lionsgate. And this was Lionsgate's first ever foreign language film. In terms of the theatre scope, a brand new actor, a genre film got the same platform as what Jawan got. Those many screens, and it was largely planned as a mixture of diaspora and non-diaspora. So the idea at the core is to expand the base.
Cast a wider net.
Cast a wider net in distribution. And it's not easy to do because there is a legacy of 100 years of business. There's a legacy of selling to the same people and being safer, getting your equity out, getting your investment out. Because equity defines, how you're doing the business. So if you go to the familiar players and then you sell your worldwide rights in India to linear TV, which is one of those, which Travel Star, Z, the whole network, then you're really fueling the diaspora. You're really fueling the diaspora. And servicing it day on day, week on week, film on film. But to step away from it and think that there's the whole world. So the dream is to be able to constantly pitch our stories to the whole world. And the diaspora champions it and comes along. I also, just coming to everything that you were saying, I really want to say that the role of storytelling and everything that you were saying is so important here. Because imagine if a large movie is taking and prioritizing an EV vehicle, is talking about, not preaching, but just doing sustainable things as characters. That shapes culture, that shapes conversation.
Absolutely.
So kuch hota hai, Shah Rukh Khan wearing the cool necklace became culture, like the whole generation wore it. And of course, it's a 90s example, but, I'm just thinking out loud here that that little soft, again, the soft power. Just looking at sustainability in our storytelling subconsciously, and it becomes, a conversation. It becomes through social media, it spreads out at large. So, and that's the soft power.
Absolutely. Or a James Bond probably driving an electric vehicle and not an Aston Martin. How's that? But having said that, Puneet, you entered a market where Uber and Ola are a staple. Like I take it to work, we take it to airport. What was that like?
I think we're very grateful to Uber for coming to India and also for Ola for the first part of mobility. So Mobility 1.0 was where Uber and Ola redefined public transport. They allowed people to move on an app. You can probably book a car and the car will come, and that lasted for a decade. What happened over time was that these people who were driving for Uber were drivers who come from very different part of India, right? And they don't have the business school education. They simply went to drive on the platforms of Ola and Uber for a better quality of life. That happened for a period of about 8 to 9 years. And then some big change happened. Uber got listed on the US stock exchange. It became the second global company in the world after Lyft to get listed on any stock exchange or US stock exchange. That was the US stock exchange. Uber got listed in Q1 CY 2019. And after that, Uber took a very calibrated decision. It saw its own balance sheet and found out that India, on a standalone basis, contributes less than 3% to Uber's global mobility revenue. So India was a very different story. And when we were building Blue Smart, we understood and realized that the supply of Uber is the biggest moat or the biggest advantage. The supply side of Uber in India is the biggest weakness for them. So we had to do something different. We could not have just replicated what was out there.
Yeah.
The most important person in this business is the driver. So we said we decouple the driver from asset ownership and we institutionalize the entire supply side. A driver should just focus on driving and should not worry about anything else. And driving is a very serious business. When you get behind the wheel, you should have zero stress, should not be thinking about any of your worries, should be focused on the road, taking care of yourself, anybody and everybody around on the road, taking care of the customer, and that should be the singular focus. But that was not there. A driver today behind the wheel has tremendous amount of stress in terms of how to pay for the fuel, where to park the car, how to pay for the EMI, how to pay the commission of the other ride-hailing platforms, how to pay your day-to-day life, how to meet expenses. What we said was that, look, the asset ownership should not be with those drivers, should be with Blue Smart. We will completely institutionalize the supply side and bring in assets which are financed by development financial institutions. We will empower drivers to have a better quality of life. So we created inclusive and equitable economic opportunities for drivers. All this became a game-changing moment for the drivers, and they started to realize that this is a great opportunity, and they started driving the way they should have driven. That led to an amazing customer experience for the customer. So Blue Smart is leveraging the power of EVs but delivering a superior customer experience. And our idea, go-to-market strategy was, let's give customers what they want, a zero ride denial service, a better service. Let's make India 2.0, or the India of today, move safer, cleaner, smarter, in a better environment, with better cars, with newish technology, empowering happy drivers, happy customers, happy ecosystem.
Guneet, speaking about Indian storytelling, and you touched upon how many of these stories have these local cultural nuances. A Tamil cinema would be different from, let's say, a Malayali or Punjabi or Marathi film. So how do you keep that authenticity alive for these stories while also, being relevant to international audiences?
The one-line answer is, the more local you go, the more global. People want to see how we are, our color, our conversation, our language. Just to give you an example, with Elephant Whispers, there was a very large conversation that let's put a narration on top of the film. To make it accessible to wider audiences. And then these are filmmaking choices. You make these choices because you're always in this room, which is like, how do we expand the access? How do we expand the how do we make it, now in its purest form, it's actually it's an indigenous film, and it's an indigenous language, and it's a combination of Kannada and Tamil. Even for the whole country, we have to consume Elephant Whispers and subtitles. So there was always this really large conversation that there should be a narration. When you're at the edit table, you're making so many choices on how this film will be consumed by the audiences. And there was an inner voice that said, imagine if that film opened with "Welcome to Madhumalai Jungles." It would take away the natural feel of it.
Yeah.
The indigenous, the real, the local, and the beauty of it lies in their language, for them to tell their own story. And there is no way we would have, come this far if we would have taken that. So you never know, if a piece of content will go win an Oscar. You can just show up every morning and do your best and make the best decision for it.
Yeah.
Keeping the integrity, the honesty, the value system, and the experience of it as pure, as local, as grounded. Because in this fast-moving, over-consumption world, when there is something beautiful and pure, it resonates every time.
And people relate to the core emotions. Shakespeare cracked it many hundred years ago that, the core emotions of jealousy, love
Absolutely.
are universal. There is no
Absolutely.
language needed for that.
Absolutely. It's just common factors. And then on our land, our area, when we did Lunchbox, it was Dabbawalas. There is always this B story, Elephant Whisperers is definitely about adopting orphan elephant and giving them a life. But the film actually works because there was love story at the back of it. There was Baman and Pelli in their beautiful world coming together, deciding to get married. And we are doing a follow documentary. We didn't know that they would decide to get married. So the film came together, when they decided. And same with Lunchbox, while it is about it is Dabbawalas, it is a color of the country, it is, the pace of a city. So many people don't travel, and for me to be able to go to remote parts of the world, and I would say, have you seen any Indian films? It's one of the first questions I ask, and people usually, and also Piyush this morning said Lunchbox. That's what takes us far, and that's what people remember India with, and it is something that I feel very, very grateful for.
What are some of the most powerful elements of Indian storytelling according to you?
Our originality, our song and dance, our pace,
Yes.
For the Southeast Asia, there has been Kung Fu and Kung Fu Karate. There has been that level of storytelling. There's been action, and you look at China, you look at Korea, you look at the Aliens, Independence Day, you look at all these films. Ours is a celebration of color, and large part of music in the whole country comes from films. So again, it's very culture defining. It's not about, there's actually a bigger scene of films giving music than pop culture giving music. So films define music year on year, decade on decade. So from a Malayalam film, Kumbhagali Nights, to Rahman's work across, to Ilya Raja, to RRR, to your Ajay Atulin, from Marathi to your Preetham with Hindi, your Sachin Jigar with every song now. So that is defining our, and that actually starts resonating. So what happened with Jai Ho, for example, which was beautifully put in a film, I think people connect to that around the world, and you see it becoming a global phenomena. Or with RRR more recently.
Tamdi Tamdi, and it was being played in all the pubs around the world, which was super hit across all the most celebrated pubs, and it's a fact.
Our songs will go further, so
Awesome. Puneet, my next question to you, and while this is about the future for India in the global context, so how do you envision Blue Smart scaling, let's say, its impact globally while staying true to your core values, what you stand for?
I think Blue Smart is also, by the way, going global.
That's awesome.
We are also
So we have
operating.
two new headlines
Yes.
from this
No,
conversation.
we actually live in Dubai.
Yeah.
So we started in Dubai with a small pilot. We have 31 Blue Smart EVs on the roads of Dubai. These are Audi e-tron cars. So really high-end electric mobility service, electric limousine service in the UAE. And the tech stack that we have built, the Born Electric technology stack at Blue Smart, I think we're incredibly proud of our technology, which is completely built from ground up. And we also filed a patent with the US Patent and Trademark Office 3 years ago. And the patent was for the following. Every single ride that we allocate to our driver and we match it with a rider, we monitor the state of charge of the car on real-time basis. So when the battery depletes or the state of charge of the battery goes below a certain threshold, the technology intervenes and routes the car to the closest charging infra. And all that happens on real-time basis, which in layman language means that we can leverage our technology to launch Blue Smart anywhere in the world. One, other companies can benefit from Blue Smart's tech stack. And because EVs to run at scale, you will need to monitor the charging infra and the car and the charging infra connected and collaborating and sharing data. On the other plain vanilla ride-hailing platforms, there's no data sharing that is happening. So, the other two incumbents really do not know the state of fuel or the state of charge or the state of battery in those cars. We were very inspired by the aviation world, where the ATC is tracking the equipments, the aircrafts on real-time basis, or the operator, whosoever the airline is tracking each of the assets once they're airborne. Similarly, we track each of our cars once they depart the charging hub. And I think this tech stack can go global. I think it could be something which can be rolled out in any country in the world, starting with UAE, maybe Saudi, maybe some other European or US market. But now coming back, I think Blue Smart is redefining mobility in India and building electric and a better future. I think mobility will radically change in India over the next few years, given that the economy is growing at a rapid pace. There's a lot of urbanization is happening. More and more people are coming to cities to work. There's a need for the public transportation platforms or business model to evolve.
Absolutely.
So,
Guneet, over to you. What would be the next stage for Indian cinema at a global stage?
I actually feel very excited about the growth that's happening within India. And I feel like we are at the start of something, and everyone is thinking about how do we expand our conversation, how do we expand our base. But that expansion is also happening within India because, you see this concept and phenomena of pan-India films. You've seen a Bahubali and today you've seen a Stree happen there, and documentary is doing so well. So India is very exciting, and and actually very large films also come to shoot in India because of the landscape we have to offer. And I think Piyush said it so rightly, our economy with the roads we build, building more facilities in India at the core, which allows even more people to come here and interact. But as a filmmaker, I feel it's a matter of time. And I can tell you what my dream is. If you look at the box office of Black Panther, and you look at $2 billion in box office, and you look at what we are doing here, I feel like we're starting out, and while we're very excited about 20 million, dollars and we call that as our glass ceiling, I feel we have immense amount of opportunity to be able to expand that base.
Correct.
So my ultimate dream is to be able to make a Brown Panther.
Oh.
And that is a matter of time, and it'll happen at one point of time. Someone will do it. And to be able to tap into the world which, films do $2 billion of box office. And that'll happen when slowly we start expanding our distribution.
And, Rajamouli, for example, has proved that, the audacity
Absolutely.
of, your project, of your dream can, in fact, have that kind of impact.
Part of my Oscar speech that the future is audacious.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to to our incredible speakers for their inspiring insights and stories. Today's discussion, in fact, has highlighted that staying authentic and true to your core while embracing innovation will aid India's leaders as they push boundaries and create a transformative future. A special thank you to Hilton Gurugram Bani City Centre for hosting us in this exceptional space. Thank you for joining us.